My name's Frank Faybik, and I'm from Lower Burrell, Pennsylvania. I was drafted into the service, and when I went down to the, what do they call that, the board down there in Pittsburgh, they asked us that they had some openings in the Navy if anybody wanted to go. And I says, I think I'd like to go because I had one brother that was in the Navy, and I said I had the other two brothers were in the Army, and that'll even it out. And that was it. So,
Did you have any liking for the Navy, though? Did you want to sail on ships or anything like that?
no, I just wanted to put my time in and get the heck out of there because, I don't know, I just didn't feel comfortable in the service at all.
So what year was this? What year did you go
55, 56, Korean War.
in? Okay.
So, like I said, I wasn't in there very long. I ended up with ulcers. And we were in a hospital, and what they did, they needed the room in the hospital, so they were so crowded. And what they did is just ask everybody, how would you like to go home? And everybody said, I'd like to go home, I'd like to go home, I'd like to go home. Okay, you're going home. And that's it. They gave you an honorable discharge, and that was it. But that was the wrong thing to do, because what it did, they didn't have enough doctors. And, you know, when you start thinking about it, and then some people, later on, they got a disability pension from the government. We didn't get nothing. My mother had 9 children. I was the youngest one. So how many was there? 7 of us had to go to the orphanage. And my mother got tuberculosis, and she ended up in a sanitarium down in Woodville, I think it was. And we weren't allowed to go down and see her because she had tuberculosis. Well, we didn't have any transportation anyhow. And so my father, what he did, he put us in an orphanage. He belonged to a lodge. It was called the Genota. And it was an insurance. He paid, I think, a nickel a week for insurance in case anything, life insurance like. But when this came up, when my mother got tuberculosis, what the Genota Lodge did is that was their home out in Harrisburg. And they sent us out there. So that was a great organization at that time. It was fantastic. And I don't know how many orphans were out there, but I would say there had to be over 100. And there would be a guy, had lots of money. He would come through twice a year and buy us ice cream. We didn't even know what ice cream was. We didn't.
Really?
Nothing.
Wow.
And all we did was work out in the orchard. And they grew their own vegetables and fruit. But we had very strict nuns. And I'm not bragging, but I was one of the baddest kids there. I was the youngest one. In fact, I want to tell you something. There's a picture. The guy that started that orphanage down there, I think it was Father Futka or something like that. And somebody wanted to take my picture with that statue. And I was so frightened, I peed myself. And I had short pants, and you could see the wetness on the granite. I mean, we were so terrified of everything when we were kids. We had those air raids. Oh, that was something. But the upbringing, the nuns tried to do the best they could. And me being the youngest and the baddest, I survived.
Did you go from the orphanage to the service?
No. My father finally got organized, and we went to, it was called Crawford Run Road, down there in East Deer. And he got a duplex. And my brother would raise ducks, and he would chop their heads off and let the blood come out. And my sisters would put the ducks in hot water, and they would pull all the feathers out and make a feather tick. If you know what that is, well, you get under one of those, you can't lift it up. And my sisters, we only had 2 bedrooms, and my sisters would all get in there under those feather ticks, but they couldn't lift them up. We had to go upstairs and lift them up because they were all small too, and we were small.
Is this like a blanket?
No, this is about this thick. You know what a pillow looks like. Mm-hmm. Okay, just figure a feather tick is that thick, but it has all feathers in. Oh. And that, all feathers in that is so heavy, especially when you're small, you know. Mm-hmm. But we only had a potbelly stove, and the vents were in the floor where the heat would go up. And my dad used to make shoes out of tires. I know people out there, their name was Schreckengross. I think they had 12 kids. And they were barefooted all year round. Even in the wintertime, wow, they were barefooted.
So you got into the Navy, and tell me about that. Where did you go to basic training?
I went up to Great Lakes, and we had a captain up there. His name was Silvers, Captain Silvers. And that's all we did was march. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I'm outspoken, and I always said, why are we marching so much? Why aren't we rowing a boat? You know? And that's all we did. And you got out of line, you kept on marching more. Yep.
Did you like basic training? Did you find it easy?
Well, everything was new to me, you know, because there was no TV or radio that informed us what's going on in the world, you know. And everything was new to me, so it was an experience. And when you're young like that, there's a lot of things you don't like. There's a lot of things you do like. And that's all I could say. Mm-hmm. But being in the Navy, they threw me on this destroyer, and the captain told me I had to go above deck and be on watch. Nobody broke you in and told you what to do. I says, Captain, what am I watching for? He says, the enemy. I says, what do they look like? You'll find out when they come. And that was it. I'm out there all by myself, nobody to help me, and I felt like a dummy out there. And I'm flying, all of a sudden we get a tornado or a hurricane, either one of them, and I'm flying from one side of the ship to the other side of the ship. And I said, Captain. I says, what am I supposed to do? I says, can't I go inside? He says, no, tie down. I said, there is no rope out here to tie down. So I was looking for rope, and I kept on flying from one side of the ship to the other side of the ship. And I mean on the ground. And here, what I did, you know where I ended up? You know where the anchor is? That's where they found me, hanging on to the anchor. They took me to the hospital. And
Wow. And what ship was this?
USS Duncan, I think it was.
A destroyer.
A destroyer, yeah.
Was it an old ship or a new ship?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've never seen a new ship. They were all, I would say, fairly used, you know.
From the war, World War
Yeah.
II era ship, yeah. So they found you wrapped around the anchor,
Mhm.
and then what happened?
Then I ended up in a hospital,
Okay.
and I had bleeding ulcers. And I still take ulcer medicine today.
And so you were medically discharged?
No, they didn't give us a medical.
They didn't.
That's what I'm saying. This is how the government got away with finding new beds for people that were wounded. We weren't wounded, so their orders were clear the spaces. If anybody wants to go home, just give them an honorable discharge, which was wrong, but everybody said, yes, we want to go home, because that's what they came around and said, how would you like to go home? I'd love to go home. Okay, you're going to get an honorable discharge, you're going home. How's that?
Did you like being at sea?
I like seeing the world because I've never saw anything like that. Like I said, when we went to the Navy, we went by train, and that was an experience. When I come home from the orphanage, we went by train. I love trains, and I'll tell you what, that was really living, you know, being on a train. Then when I got older and got married, I took my kids down to Disney World 2 or 3 times by train. We went and stopped at Virginia, and then we went down to Disney World. I don't know, there's something about trains I love. And when I came home from the orphanage by train, there was a place, I don't know, in Pennsylvania where it was, but you could see the front and the back of that train when it made that bend. And boy, was that beautiful.
And what's the story of your hat? That's an engineer's hat, right?
Right.
What's the story there?
Well, I found this hat in a place, I can't tell you where, but there was only 2 hats here. And about 2 months later, everybody, right away, when I started wearing it, everybody made a comment. Where'd you get that? Where'd you get it? I wouldn't tell them. So I went back to the same place, and I got 2 more. So that's the story there. But everybody wants a hat like this, and it's just an eye catcher, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then I really knew how important this hat was when that woman wanted to pay $100 for it down the Steeler game. And they had me on TV with that woman trying to get my hat, you know.
Now, you knew Eddie Adams.
Oh, real good.
Did you grow up with Eddie?
Yeah, well, what happened is when we were younger, we were dating nurses over Citizens General Hospital. They were going to be nurses, and we were dating, double dating, and that's how I got to know them. And when I would go visit and go say, pick them up, you could never find them. And what happened is he was in the John, and he was reading the paper or reading a book, and he'd be in there for a whole hour. In the meantime, I'd be out there eating breakfast. But had a lot of experiences. I don't know if I should tell this one about the cow. He made a cow out of cardboard. And he says to me, you know where Bakerstown Road is? I said, yep. He says, would you take me out to Bakerstown Road? I See, he lived over Kensington, and I used to live over in Trentham on 9th Avenue. So I says, okay. So he said, grab that cow over there. I said, what cow? That piece of cardboard. I made a cow out of that cardboard. What's the matter with you? Don't you see it? I said, yeah, what are you going to do with it? Now, I'm trying to figure out how old I was. I think I was about 18 years old, 19 years old. And he said, you'll see. So we go out to Bakerstown Road, and all of a sudden he said, this is the place. I said, what place? I said, there's bulls out there. He said, that's what I'm saying. This is the place. I want you to take that bull and stake it into the ground. And we're going to see if the bulls come up, and I'm going to take a picture of it. He had an imagination, this guy, I'll tell you. So I went out there like a dummy, put it in the ground, and we waited about half an hour. Here comes the bulls. And that's what they try to do, hump it. And he took a picture. And he was something else. Then one time we're working down the dispatch, and we're doing pictures down there, developing. And it's about 1 o'clock in the morning. He gets a phone call. The Harmerville police. There's some guy down here shooting at everybody on the island. And they're trying to evict him for a couple days, and they can't evict him. So he's shooting at people, anybody that crosses. And this is across the tracks down in Harmerville, like a little island there. So he says, come on, Frank, let's go. I says, Eddie, it's raining like hell. He said, that's okay. He said, I want to get a picture of that guy. When he shoots, I want to get the illusion when it lights up from the gun. And I looked at him, and I said, and you want me for a guinea pig, right? He said, yeah. I said, yeah, but it's raining out. It'll be all mud. He said, that's all right. It'll be worth it. That's all, honest to God, that's all he had on his mind. That's all he had on his mind.
And so what happened?
What?
Did he get the picture?
Oh, yeah, he got the picture.
He did.
Yeah, that's what I said. I've seen so many pictures of his, but I've never seen that one. So I was wondering if somebody lost it or he never turned it in, but that would have been a good one.
And what's the story of you and Eddie driving through the alleys?
Oh, when he got a new Corvette. He got a new Corvette. We went, I'd say about 3 o'clock in the morning. There was a bakery in the alley, and we used to get stuff, bakery goods, donuts and that, I forget who the woman was, but she'd give us a couple free ones every once in a while. And he got that Corvette, and I'll tell you where Jerome's is down there, and there was a police station down there someplace not too far away. And we'd go down there, 80 miles an hour he would go in there, and he'd blow that horn, and it echoed all over New Kensington. Honest to God. I mean, he'd come up with these ideas. I thought I was a little weird once in a while. But he'd come up with these ideas.
Did you keep in touch with Eddie?
Yeah.
You did?
Yep. How would I say, I used to babysit 3 girls, so I would have enough money to go to beauty school, okay? And I had a hair salon later on. And Eddie took a picture of my godchild, and he was going to use her for a model. And the picture's here. I brought the picture down here someplace. Her name is Linda Men. And she lives in Florida. That's all I know, but she's my godchild. But anyhow, what happened is I'm up in Detroit going to beauty school, and I lost track of Eddie. And here, when I was up there, to go to school, this was really weird. When I was going to beauty school, There was a little guy, his name was BJ, and he used to follow me around all over the place. And I asked him one day, you know what, BJ, why don't you just go over there and do your work and learn how to do hair? I said, what are you doing here anyhow? He says, well, I'll tell you what. My dad sent me here because I told him I wanted to go to school, but I didn't tell him what kind of school. He stole from the Post-Gazette money. And what happened, his dad was a retired coal miner, and they said, you either go to school or you go to jail. And he says, I'll go to school. But he didn't tell his dad it was a beauty school. So he went to beauty school, and he followed me all around. So one day I says to him, I says, you know, I'd like to really go to advanced hairstyling school and take this up and put a salon up someplace. He says, I'd like to have the talent you have. I says, I'm learning just like you. He says, that ain't the talent I'm talking about. He says, did you ever notice when you walk in a door, everybody starts talking? In the meantime, before that, they weren't talking at all. He said, that's talent. This little shit was telling me this. He said, I told my dad all about you, and my dad would like to meet you. I says, oh, I don't know about that. I says, what could I tell your dad? You know, well, you said you wanted to go to Virginia Farrow up in Detroit, and my dad said maybe he could help you out. I said, I have nothing to pay your dad back if he gave me money to go up there and take you with me. He says, well, go down and see him. He wants to meet you. So I went down, and the guy says to me, he says, you're going to babysit my boy. I'm going to pay you. He says, they're going to go by train. He said, go for 6 weeks, like he said. I'll pay all expenses. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like God heard a prayer, you know. And bingo, here we are. We're going on a train. We're going to Virginia Farrow for 6 weeks. We get up there, and guess what happened? He got the shingles. I put him in a bathtub with milk. That's all I knew. And I was having a lot of fun myself. But here, what happened one day, I got a phone call. It's Eddie Adams. He was up in Detroit. I didn't know that. And he was going to go to Philadelphia and be Princess Grace's private photographer. That's what he said. He wanted me to drive his car, which was a big Roadmaster, to his mother's place on Martin Avenue in New Kensington with all his equipment, all his cameras and everything. I said, Eddie, I never drove your car. Oh, don't worry. Well, I had a nickname, and it was called Flap. And the reason, I don't know why they called me Flap, but my brother's name was Flap, I know that. And then I picked it up from my brother, I guess. But anyhow, here what happened is, I said, okay, I'll take it, but we have to make some arrangements for PJ. He says, I will. I'll call his dad up, put him on a train. His dad could meet the train. He says, don't worry about a thing. I'll pay for the expenses. So he made all the arrangements. And I had this big Roadmaster. In the meantime, I was dating this girl. And here on a radio, it said that Detroit was going to get a terrific storm, like a blizzard. And it's going to hit there in 3 hours. So I said to this girl, I said, I'm going to take off because I'm not familiar with his car, and I got all his equipment, which is worth a lot of money, and it means a lot to him, and that's his livelihood. So I took off, and it was more than an hour I hit that doggone highway. That was a blizzard so bad it wasn't funny. One truck went past me, and that was it in 12 hours. I was on that road for 12 hours. I just sat there. After the blizzard, I hit the Pennsylvania Turnpike. It was shut down. 3 hours, Pennsylvania. I said, I got to be crazy. I said, over his cameras. I'm risking my life over his cameras, honest to God. But he always said, don't worry, I'll pay you back. He said, I'll pay you back, Frank. Don't worry. Well, he called me Flap. And guess what? He did. When I went up to New York, I went up to Charles of the Ritz up there for 3 days for a convention, which was another high-class, they taught beauty school. And I called them up and I told them that I was coming up there, and the Freelanders invited me for lunch, and they owned Berkey's Menswear. And she was one of my customers. So he says, well, I'm taking you for the best steak that you ever had in your life. And I told you, it's on me. And believe me, this guy, he had those raggy clothes on, you know. I had sport coat on because I don't like ties and all that stuff. And we're going to go for dinner. So we're walking over to the elevator, and the elevator boy, he presses the button, and all of a sudden, these people with the guys, $2,000 suits they had on. Hello, Mr. Adams. And just like he was God, they all moved over on a side. And me and him walked in, and they made so much room for us, it wasn't funny. I said, holy heck, Ed, after this was all done, boy, do you have them conned in, I'll tell you. But he did. We went down, and the chef down there cooked the steak right in front of us on a fireplace and everything. It was beautiful.
Wow. So he was a pretty famous guy.
Oh, yes, he was. Everybody knew him.
Yeah.
Everybody knew him.
When's the last time you saw Eddie?
So, you know, I was sort of mad because when he died, nobody told me he died. And they had the funeral and everything, and I learned it like the day after, because his sisters, once in a while I would bump into them, and they would give me an update, and then they had some functions down here, and we all came down here, and his sister from Florida, I think her name was Lorraine, she would give me the update, and her husband and everything. And I remember the first time I came down here, his mother was here. And she was a really, really nice woman to put up with me, I'll tell you. Because I used to hang out at their place, you know, over in Kensington.